Driver's license testers, what's the worst thing a kid has done without batting an eye while taking the driving test? Not a tester, but there was a license center next to the sporting goods store I worked at. A lot of people would come there and practice before their test out front in the straight on parking spots. A young lady, who only had her permit, managed to mix up the gas and brake and drove right through the front of the license center. I was told later that she was even more upset when they wouldn't let her reschedule her test for the following day, since they cancelled her test she was pulling in to take when she wrecked the whole front of the building. It wasn't long after that they installed a bunch of bollards in front to protect the building. I was amazed at how marked up they had gotten in the first few months. Answered his phone. My driver's ed teacher said that one kid reclined his seat all the way back, put one foot on the gas and the other on the brake, and grabbed the top of the wheel with one hand and said, "Let's go." Not a tester. But I heard about a girl in driver's ed who was driving on the interstate with a teacher and 3 other students. The teacher commented that they missed the exit, but they would just get off on the next one. I'm not sure what the girl's thought process was, but this girl pulled into the grass and tried to go against the traffic to go back to their missed exit. The teacher had to use her brake on the passenger side while the 3 other students screamed bloody murder. My best friend's son just failed because he went the wrong way down a busy 4-lane road. Luckily, they made it safely into a parking lot and the testing administrator drove them back. When I went to take mine, the tester waited till I was at an intersection and then yelled, "Turn left." She scared me so I didn't fail, lol. When I went back to try again, she was just ripping into this girl and her mom in the parking lot. I was like, at least I'll get a different tester cause she's clearly busy, lol. I'm not a tester, but I asked my tester during my full license test what was the worst thing someone had done. Apparently there was an older gentleman who drove through 3 stop signs before the tester told him to pull over. The gentleman explained that he didn't want the license but his family was pressuring him, so ran the signs on purpose to fail, made sure no cars were coming first. When I was sitting my test, I asked the tester how many tests he did in a normal day. His answer was 10. Not all that surprising. And 8 will fail before making it out of the car park. I asked him to elaborate. And apparently the vast majority of test sitters will fail for administrative reasons. Like arriving late to the test, not bringing their existing learner's licenses, or having a vehicle that wasn't road legal. The latter was more common than it sounds. When all lights turn, signals horn etc are tested in the car park before the test itself begins. Fail any of the above and you've wasted your $75 and never even got into gear. While I was waiting for my turn to do my CDL test, I watched a guy in a semi back into a light pole and instead of seeing what he gently backed into, gassed it and knocked it over. Needless to say, I didn't get to take my test for an hour or so while they cleaned it up. The kids make minor mistakes. And yes, some do make scary mistakes. However, it's the adults that scare me most. Especially the seniors who are up for re-exam. Probably the worst test I've ever been on was this man in his 90s. I instructed him to turn onto a street when it is safe to do so. And he turned, narrowly missing a pedestrian. Not only that, but he was driving on the wrong side of the road. He came head to head with another car who pulled over to let him go. He was laughing about it, because he was under the impression that it was a one-way road. When I got back to the office with him, I cut the test short and got him back in the quickest and safest way possible. He was astounded when I told him it was not a one-way street. Me, did you see any one-way signs? Him, no, but I assumed you were going to take me on one. Huh? Question mark? Edited for clarity. Sorry. Edit. My best friend was coming to a 4-way stop sign in our small rural town. The tester said to go straight. So she did. Without stopping at the sign. Just drove right through without batting an eye. He basically told her, "Well, you failed." if you want to just drive back. Last year I was making a left turn at a light, and a car swerved into my lane and hit me. Turns out it was someone taking their driver's test. I'm not exactly sure how driver's test car insurance works, but the instructor told me we had to wait for the police and take details of everything. I am guessing the driver did not pass. I went forward instead of in reverse when the tester was standing in front of me on the curb. I failed. One of my classmates in HS failed his driver's test 6 times. During one test, he hit a pedestrian. Opposite kind of story here. When I was taking driver's ed, I was in a car that had the brake on the passenger side for the instructor to use just in case. Going 35 down fairly busy street, my car all of a sudden comes to a complete stop. In horror I look over at my instructor who is sound asleep with his foot on the brake. I just sat there dumbfounded. After a couple people honked real quick, he shook himself awake, mumbled a quick accelerate and sat up adjusting his glasses. So that was fun. Edit: yes, I did pass. Guy was in his 70s and just didn't care about anything. My grandfather used to be a tester. He had one girl forget which way to turn the steering wheel, and they ended up in a ditch. I should have technically failed mine, as when I did my turn across the oncoming lane, a car was reasonably close coming towards us. We get back to the registry, and the tester says I could have failed you there, but it was raining. There was dark low cloud and it was a black car without its lights on coming over the crest of a hill, so I gave you the benefit of the doubt. Well, fantastic, I think. So that afternoon I go for my first solo drive, and as I'm pulling into a shopping mall, I completely miss a pedestrian crossing sign and nearly run someone down. I slam on the brakes at the last second, and am apologizing profusely, and she's just staring at me. It was the woman who did my test. She just shook her head and walked off. Thanks for the benefit of the doubt though. My dad was friends with a guy who worked for the registry giving the road test. His best story was of a kid who took his test while it was raining. He started driving without the windshield wipers on. The guy figured he was nervous, so tried to give him a break, saying, "It's raining pretty hard." Huh. The kid was white-knuckled on the steering wheel and just said, "Yeah." Again trying to give the kid a break, he said, "Don't you think you should do something about that?" The kid said, "Yeah." Apparently he didn't know where the wiper controls were, so he rolled down the driver's side window and stuck his head out. At that point he stopped the test and failed him. Took a test with a girl who drove on the wrong side of the road and took a left turn into oncoming traffic all in the same drive. It was through my school and she was banned from taking it through the school because of that. In my local area, a guy in his mid-20s failed the test for some reason. At this point in time the results of the test were shared in the car. After being told he failed, he proceeded to get out of the car and grab an axe out of the trunk. I don't know any more details beyond that, but apparently it is why the results are shared inside the licensing building rather than in the car. Okay, 3 stories. My ex drove a Geo Tracker, tiny car. She pulled right into the parallel parking area and fit in so unbelievably easy. The tester made her do it properly. A girl in my driver's ed failed her test when she went to DMV because she turned into oncoming traffic. Not only was there a grass median, there was some of those skinny red-white poles for about 10 feet followed by a guardrail. Each side of the median was 3 lanes. There really was no way to miss it. But she did. On a lighter note, I did the backing up 100 feet. When the tester told me when, I stopped, and before I put it into park he asked me a few verbal questions. Then proceeded to give me directions to leave the area and back to the parking lot where the parallel parking test would be done. Never put the car in drive. Pressed the gas, and car went flying in reverse for about 20 feet. He apologized and said, "My fault for distracting you. As far as I'm concerned that never happened." Wasn't a kid. My 80-year-old great aunt. The tester kept telling her to speed up. After a few times she said she can't see the speedometer, so she doesn't know fast she is going. He made her pull over and she did not receive a renewal. Thank God. Edit. LPT. Drive extra careful around pharmacies. It's usually crowded with old people. It's one of the few places they need to drive to. When I parallel parked, I hit the pole behind me. And the tester said it's fine. This should be an automatic fail, but I think that's a bit too harsh. Then I hit the pole in front of me head on. Did not pass. My old driving instructor told me about a kid that pulled into the drive-thru at McDonald's. Ordered some food. Then realized he left his wallet in his other car, was using the instructor's car. He wanted the instructor to pay for his food and said he'd offer half of his fries in return. The wallet also contained his license. So the instructor failed him on the spot and told him to get out the car. My dad did testing for a few years and he once had a girl stop on railroad tracks. There was a train coming, slowly. But still it takes them a long time to stop, and it blasted the horn right into the car, passenger side. With the window open. This just made her freeze up even more. He had to reach his foot over to her side to hit the accelerator. Edit to at, in Canada you can do your driver's test in any car you choose because, in theory, you should be good enough at driving to not need an instructional car. So this car did not have dual pedals. Not a tester. But I watched my, at the time, know-it-all son do the California roll through 3 consecutive stop signs as he was exiting the courthouse parking lot at the beginning of the test. The tester stopped the test and failed him on the spot. Before he even got out of the parking lot. My son's excuse, I thought the test hadn't started yet. My father used to tell stories of when his dad worked at the Massachusetts registry. One story, and I'll change names because internet, he told was there was this kid taking a test who was awful. But the kid was really stuck up. Somehow he had gotten my grandfather's name. So after the kid tries to act all slick and pull strings and goes, "I know Chuck Lafitte," my grandfather giving the test says, "Oh really? You know Chuck Lafitte?" Kid's like, "Yep." "No you don't. Because I'm Chuck Lafitte." Kid did not get a license that day. Edit. Heard these stories long time ago. Thief we're told all the time. But now it's been so long I don't remember them well. Thinking about it. The kid may even have claimed to be related to Chuck Lafitte. Which makes him even dumber. This reminded me of a moment I had during my final test. The tester had an arm injury and was wearing a brace on his right arm. I took a left turn way too hard and caused him to accidentally hit his arm against the door. I was just like, "Oh frick, I'm so sorry." Surprisingly, he passed me that day. Maybe he didn't want me to come back LMAO. I was the kid. And full transparency, it was a learning drive. Not the test. We had to do 6 scheduled drives with our instructor. And had a partner. One would drive for 30 minutes. Then you would stop and switch so the other could drive back. The rule when you got in the car, just so it wasn't a constant game of should I turn, was that you always go straight until the instructor tells you to turn. So one Saturday, we had a very early drive scheduled. We met up at the school. And I was the first to drive. We got about 5 minutes in. Turned onto a main road. And the instructor quickly fell asleep. My partner and I quietly, with a smirk, agreed that we would still follow the rules. We took the road for about an hour and 15 minutes. Until it dead-ended and you had to turn. I pulled over in a parking lot. And we woke up the instructor to ask him which way to turn. It took a good 30 seconds for him to realize what had happened and where we were. He yelled at us both to get in the back seat. And we witnessed some very unsafe ways to drive as we headed back towards the school. And I didn't bat an eye. While taking our CDL test, I was sitting in the sleeper area. And the guy actually taking the test ground gears when shifting. He immediately let go of the steering wheel, causing the proctor to have to grab the steering wheel and drive for the 5 or so seconds it took for him to recompose himself. In high school, my friend who was 18 at the time went to take his driving test. He drove himself there and failed the first time by doing a rolling stop at a stop sign. So he drove himself home. He tried a second time, did another rolling stop, failed again, and drove home. He got it the third time, though.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.